The facility was cold, unnervingly so. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, flickering as if they were trying to warn anyone who dared to step closer. But there was no turning back for him now. He had heard the rumors, the stories of the alien. Giantess trapped inside the cage. Some said she was a weapon, others said she was an experiment. But no one ever dared to get close. Everyone knew it was dangerous. The stories were enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Yet, here he was, standing before the cage, unable to pull himself away. He stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing. On the concrete floor, the air around him seemed to thicken, as though the very walls of the facility were closing in on him. His heart pounded in his chest. Was it fear, excitement, or something else entirely? The cage stood in front of him, large and imposing. Metal bars stretched high, obscuring what was inside. But he knew she was there, the Giantess. He could feel her presence even before he laid eyes on her. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. His hand reached for the bars, his fingers brushing against the cold steel. That's when he heard it. A soft growl. He froze. There, in the shadows, was the figure of a giant. Her purple skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her eyes gleamed with an intensity that made his breath catch. She was massive, towering over him even from behind the bars. Her muscles rippled as she shifted, testing the strength of her chains. The Giantess was unlike anything he had ever seen, and yet there was something oddly captivating about her. Her features were sharp, fierce, but undeniably beautiful. The way her lips curled into a slight, mocking smile sent a shiver down his spine. It was as though she knew exactly what he was thinking, and she was enjoying it. He took a step closer. Another step, drawn to her, unable to resist. Her eyes followed him, and the moment his foot touched the ground, her voice broke the silence. It was low, guttural, and laced with a teasing tone. "You think you can control me, little human?" His stomach flipped. Was she speaking to him? What are you waiting for? She continued, her voice getting louder, more confident. "Are you going to cower in fear? Or are you going to see what happens when you challenge me?" He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he should run or stay. But the challenge hung in the air. The words she spoke weren't a warning. They were an invitation, a dangerous one. He looked at her, and for a moment, the thought crossed his mind, what if he did challenge her? What if he dared to step into her world, to face whatever power she had within her? Could he control her, or would he be the one who lost control? Before he could stop himself, the words escaped his lips. "I'm not afraid of you." The words felt wrong the moment they left his mouth. He couldn't take them back now. The Giantess's smile widened. "You should be, but it's too late now." He took another step closer, but this time, she didn't back down. Her muscles tensed, and the bars creaked under her weight. She shifted forward, her gaze now burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce his very soul. There was no turning back now. "You wanted to play. Let's see how will you do when you're up close." The air felt heavier. The space between them seemed to shrink with every breath. He could feel his heart racing, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from her. The Giantess wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was in control. Was he ready for what came next? Or had he made a grave mistake? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. And in that moment, he knew. This was just the beginning. What will happen when he gets too close? Will he survive her power, or will he be forever changed? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The cold air seemed to close in around him as he stood frozen in front of the cage. His breath was shallow, quick, his heart still hammering in his chest. The Giantess's eyes never left him, those glowing purple orbs tracking every movement. He had dared to speak to her, dared to approach. Now, there was no going back. Every step felt like it was dragging him deeper into unknown territory. The cage loomed large before him, and the bars seemed to separate him from her. But the distance felt insignificant now. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was a force of nature, something far beyond his understanding. Her presence filled the room, and with every breath, the space seemed to grow smaller. Her gaze softened, but only for a split second. He wasn't sure if it was a trick of the light, or if there was something in her expression that changed, something subtle but undeniable. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," she said, her voice smooth like velvet, but laced with a dangerous undertone. The way her lips parted as she spoke made the words almost sound like a promise. But a promise of what? He swallowed hard, his throat dry. Was this a game to her? Was she playing with him, toying with the little human who thought he could outwit her? But there was something more, something that made him step closer, a force he couldn't explain, pulling him in. He didn't want to back down, not yet. Not when he was so close to finding out what she really was, and what she was capable of. He stared into her eyes, feeling the heat radiating from her. His voice came out, shakier than he intended. "What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders. There was a mischievous glint in her eyes, as if she was trying to figure him out. "I want you to keep coming back, but more than that, I want you to feed me." The words hung in the air. Feed her. The very idea sent a ripple of tension through him. Was she asking for food, or was there more to it? She leaned forward, her body stretching closer to the bars, and for the first time, he could see the full extent of her muscular frame. She was powerful, impossibly so. Her arms were like coiled steel, and even the slightest movement from her made the metal of the cage creak in protest. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Everyone has been too afraid to feed me, too afraid to do anything more than look. But you're not like them, are you?" A chill ran down his spine. It wasn't just her power that was intoxicating, it was the way she spoke. The confidence in her words. She wasn't asking for mercy, she was demanding respect. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken questions. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the decision weighing on his shoulders. The space between them felt charged, as though at any moment, something might explode. He had a choice to make. He could walk away, turn around, pretend this never happened. He could stick to the rules, keep his distance, and leave her in her cage where she belonged. But his mind raced. Wasn't that what everyone else had done? Ignored her, feared her, kept their distance, never once considering what it might be like to challenge her, to feed her. "What if I do feed you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her lips curled into a slow, predatory smile. "Then you'll see what happens when you feed a caged beast." The way she said it sent a thrill through him. This was no longer just about feeding her, it was about what came next. He didn't know what that would be, but he wasn't sure he could resist. Not now. Not when the promise of something deeper, something more dangerous, lingered in the air. Her eyes never left his, and the room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. It was as though they were both waiting for something, a moment to break. A moment that would change everything. "Come closer," she purred, "and see what happens when you break the rules." His breath caught in his throat, and his body moved before his mind could catch up. The cage was no longer just a prison, it was the threshold, and he was about to cross it. But at what cost? What will happen when he steps forward? Is feeding her the right choice, or will it be his downfall? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. His heart raced as he approached the cage again, this time with a new determination. The air was thick with the promise of something wild, something dangerous. He had already stepped too far in, and there was no way to go back now. The question wasn't whether he should turn around. It was whether he was ready for what came next. The Giantess's eyes never left him, her gaze burning through him like an inferno. Her body was a force of nature, every muscle defined, rippling with raw power. She wasn't just an alien, she was something more, something that commanded respect, something that made him feel small and insignificant yet strangely vital. He reached for the tray of food, his hands shaking. It felt absurd. Here he was, standing before a creature more powerful than he could ever imagine, and he was supposed to feed her like some animal. But it wasn't just about food anymore, it was about proving himself. He placed the tray at the edge of the cage, his eyes never leaving hers. Her stare was intense, probing. She leaned forward slightly, her posture menacing, but there was something else there, too. Curiosity, hunger, not just for the food, for something more. For a moment, silence reigned. He could feel the weight of her presence, like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. He had done it. He had dared to break the rules, and now all that was left was the consequences. The Giantess's lips parted, and she spoke in a voice that sent shivers down his spine. "So, you think feeding me will make you the hero, HMM?" Her tone was mocking, but there was a thread of something else there. Something darker. "You think this will give you control?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The words felt stuck in his throat. The Giantess's expression changed. The teasing smile from before faded, replaced by something far more dangerous. "You're not afraid of me, are you? You think you've won just by feeding me? Just by breaking the rules?" Her voice softened. "You're wrong." His heart skipped a beat. The way she said it, it wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. The tension in the air thickened. Every step he took now felt like it was pushing him closer to a point of no return. The cage had once been a barrier, a thing that kept her confined. But now, he was the one who was trapped by his own choices. Without warning, the Giantess reached through the bars, her massive hand almost effortlessly wrapping around his wrist. He gasped, startled by her strength. Her grip was firm, but not painful. Yet, the power behind it was unmistakable. "You think you're in control, but you're not." Her words were cold, and the intensity in her eyes made his pulse quicken. She pulled him closer. For a moment, the world outside the cage seemed to disappear. He was no longer just a man feeding an alien. He was now a part of the game. A piece in her world, and in that world, she called the shots. "Do you want to know what happens when you give me what I want?" she whispered, her lips just inches from his ear. He could barely breathe. His thoughts were a whirlwind, a storm of confusion and anticipation. He had stepped into something far bigger than himself. He had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. "I could crush you with a single move," she continued, her voice low and sultry. "But I won't, not yet." Her eyes flickered with something dangerous. She wasn't bluffing. He could feel it. Her strength, her power, it was all real. But so was the pull. The undeniable attraction she radiated. It was both terrifying and intoxicating. The tray of food sat forgotten on the ground between them. The promise of nourishment overshadowed by the promise of something darker. She leaned closer, and he felt her breath warm against his skin. "You've given me what I wanted. But now, I want more." His breath hitched. What did she mean? What more could she want from him? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. But he had a feeling he wouldn't like the answer. The Giantess's grip tightened for a moment, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his body. She smiled. "The real question is, what are you willing to do for me next?" The suspense hung thick in the air, and for the first time, he realized something terrifying. He had no idea how far he was willing to go. What is she really asking for? What more could he give? Drop your guesses in the comments below. The moment felt like it had been stretched into eternity. The tension so thick in the air it was almost suffocating. The Giantess's grip on his wrist remained firm, her touch both possessive and dangerously alluring. Her presence was overwhelming, every inch of her body radiating power, strength, and control. But there was something else now, something he couldn't ignore. Her eyes held a flicker of something deeper, something darker, and he knew without a doubt that the moment he had stepped closer to her, he had crossed a line that now seemed impossible to uncross. She pulled him in slightly, her lips brushing against his ear as she whispered, "I told you, little human, you don't control this." Her voice was both cold and teasing, sending shivers down his spine. "You've given me what I wanted, but now, it's time to see what happens when you're no longer in charge." He wanted to pull away, to break free, but his body didn't obey. His heart was racing, his mind spinning in a whirlwind of confusion. His eyes were locked on her, his body frozen in place, caught in the magnetic pull of her presence. He had wanted to know what it was like to challenge her, but now, he wasn't sure if he was ready for the consequences. Her other hand reached out through the bars of the cage, slowly and deliberately, until it hovered just inches from his chest. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, her strength practically vibrating in the air. "I can feel your heartbeat, so fast, so terrified. But you still don't understand, do you?" Her fingers lightly brushed the fabric of his shirt, the movement so casual, so effortless, that it sent a rush of heat through his body. He gulped, trying to steady himself. I thought I could handle it," he stammered. barely able to keep his voice steady. "But now, I'm not so sure." The Giantess chuckled darkly, a low sound that reverberated through the room. "You're not sure," she repeated, her tone dripping with amusement. "You've already made your choice. Little human, you're mine now, and you'll never be the same again." He could feel it now. Her power was no longer just physical. It was psychological, like an invisible web wrapping around him, pulling him deeper into her world. She was right. He had already chosen, but now, the weight of that decision was settling on his shoulders, and it was far heavier than he had ever imagined. "I don't think you understand what you've unleashed," she continued, her eyes glowing brighter as she spoke. "This isn't just about food or control, or me getting what I want. It's about something far bigger, something that's going to change everything." The air in the room felt charged now, like the storm before the lightning strike. The Giantess wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was a force, a storm he could never hope to control. And somehow, by feeding her, by coming closer to her, he had become part of that storm. "You think you've fed me to make me happy," she purred, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But now I want more. I want to see how much you're willing to sacrifice for me, how far you'll go." His pulse quickened as her words sank in. Was she challenging him, or was this something else entirely? She wanted more. But what exactly did that mean? The Giantess's smile widened, and she leaned forward again, her breath hot against his ear. "You think feeding me was your only choice, but there's so much more you can give me." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, thick with promise. "I want to see how far you'll push yourself, how much you'll endure before you break. Will you give me everything, or will you run?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Run. There was no running from her. He knew that now. He had crossed the line, and she was holding him there, keeping him close, trapping him in her world. His body tensed, caught between the thrill of the challenge and the fear of what would come next. He wanted to pull away, but there was no way out. The cage was no longer just a physical barrier, it was a symbol of his helplessness. He had given her power, and now, she was going to show him just how much power she had over him. "What will it be, little human?" she asked, her voice soft but full of danger. "Will you let me show you how far you can go, or will you stay trapped in your own fear?" Her grip tightened just enough to send a spark of pain through his wrist, but he didn't dare pull away. He was too intrigued, too mesmerized by what was happening. Something inside him was screaming to fight back, but another part of him wanted to give in, to let her take control completely. The Giantess's eyes narrowed, and she gave him a knowing smile. "You think you have a choice, you don't. You belong to me now, and there's no escaping that." The power dynamic had shifted. There was no going back now. He was no longer the one in control. He was her plaything, and she would take everything from him slowly, painfully, and with pleasure. What's the next move? Will he submit completely, or will he still try to fight back? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The tension between them was palpable now, a constant hum in the air, thick with unsaid words and unspoken promises. He had crossed the point of no return, and the weight of his choice pressed down on him like 1,000 pounds. The Giantess stood before him, her towering form almost hypnotic in its grace and power. She moved with an effortless elegance, her every step radiating dominance. And yet, there was something more beneath it all, something that made him feel as though he was nothing more than a plaything in her hands. Her eyes never left him, burning with a hunger that wasn't just for food. "You thought feeding me would be enough, that you'd be free after giving me what I wanted," she mused, her voice low and seductive, but also heavy with a darker edge. "But you were wrong." Her lips curled into a knowing smile, and the gleam in her eyes deepened. She stepped closer, the space between them shrinking with each slow, calculated movement. His breath hitched as she towered over him, her body a mass of muscles and unbridled strength. Yet her presence was still so captivating, so intoxicating, that he couldn't tear his eyes away. The power she exuded was overwhelming, but so was the pull she had on him, a pull that went far beyond physical attraction. "What do you think I want from you now?" she asked, her voice dripping with a teasing lilt that made his heart race. "You've already given me what I wanted, but there's more, you know that, don't you?" He wanted to answer, but his mouth went dry. What could he say? What could he do? Every move she made had him second-guessing himself, but at the same time, part of him yearned for more. Part of him wanted to see just how far he could go, how much he could endure. Her fingers reached out, trailing lightly across his chest, her touch sending a jolt through his body. He froze, unable to move, unable to speak. His body betrayed him, reacting to her every touch, his heart pounding in his ears. "You want to prove yourself, don't you?" she asked, her voice so soft now, almost a whisper. "You want to show me that you're brave, that you can handle whatever comes next. But can you?" Her words sent a thrill through him, and he found himself leaning in, drawn to her even though every instinct screamed at him to run. She was dangerous, yes, but she was also irresistible. There was something primal about the way she spoke, the way she moved, and he could feel it pulling him in deeper. "Tell me, little human," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "How far will you go for me? What are you willing to do?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. He knew she wasn't asking just about the food anymore. This wasn't about feeding her, it was about something more, something darker, something that would change him in ways he couldn't even imagine. Her smile widened, and she took another step closer, her body almost touching his now. He could feel the heat radiating off her, the power and dominance practically radiating from her like a force he couldn't escape. She had him exactly where she wanted him, and she knew it. "You think you're in control, but you're not. I could make you do anything I want." Her voice was low, dangerous. "But I won't. Not yet." Her words sent a shiver down his spine, a thrill of both fear and desire coursing through him. She was right. He wasn't in control, and somewhere, deep inside, he realized that maybe he didn't want to be. He was trapped now, caught in a game he didn't fully understand, and the Giantess was the one holding all the cards. "You're playing with fire, little human," she purred, her fingers trailing across his neck, sending sparks of electricity through his body. "And when you play with fire, you get burned." He felt the heat rising between them, the distance closing to nothing. He could no longer tell if he was afraid of her, or if he was just afraid of how much he wanted her. But one thing was certain, he was in her world now, and in her world, rules didn't apply. Her hands moved to his waist, her fingers brushing just below his shirt. "So, tell me, are you ready for what comes next?" she asked, her voice dripping with honeyed sweetness. But there was an unmistakable edge to it, an edge that made him hesitate, but only for a moment. Before he could answer, the Giantess's eyes darkened with a mischievous glint. "You don't have to answer. I already know. You're ready." And with that, she closed the gap between them, her lips just a breath away from his. The world seemed to fall away as the space between them closed completely. Her presence overwhelmed him, pulling him in, drowning him in the heat of her body, the intensity of her gaze. The Giantess stood so close now that he could feel her breath against his skin, could smell the faint scent of something exotic and intoxicating. She wasn't just a creature anymore, she was a force of nature, a storm. When he had no hope of outrunning, he wanted to pull back. He should pull back, but everything inside him screamed to stay, to give in. Her fingers were still brushing lightly against his waist, sending jolts of electricity through his body with every touch. The heat between them was undeniable, and he couldn't escape it. Her grip tightened, pulling him closer, as if she were daring him to resist. "You think you can resist me?" she whispered, her voice a soft purr, seductive and dangerous all at once. "You think you can walk away after everything you've done?" His heart pounded in his chest, and for a brief moment, he considered it. He considered pulling away, telling her that he was done, that he had made his choice, and that it was time for him to leave. But that thought was fleeting. The pull, the magnetic attraction, was too strong. It had always been strong. No one else dared to get this close, she continued, her words a challenge, a taunt. "They were too afraid to face me, too afraid to test their limits. But not you. You think you can handle me, don't you?" He looked into her eyes, those glowing purple orbs that seemed to peer straight through him, and he couldn't help but nod. He didn't know what he was saying yes to anymore. Maybe he was agreeing to something he didn't fully understand. But right now, it didn't matter. All that mattered was the heat in her touch, the power in her voice, the way she made him feel both terrified and alive at the same time. "Then prove it," she said, her voice dropping to a hushed, almost imperceptible whisper. "Prove to me that you can handle everything I give you. Prove to me that you're ready for what happens next." The challenge hung in the air like a storm cloud, crackling with tension, with something just about to break. He could feel the weight of her words settling on him, could feel the shift inside himself. What had started as a game, a dare, had become something much bigger, something much darker, something he wasn't sure he could control. Her fingers moved again, slowly, deliberately, tracing the outline of his jaw. He closed his eyes, unable to stop himself from leaning into the touch, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Her hand trailed lower, down his neck, sending waves of heat through his body with every movement. She was in control, and for the first time, he realized that he liked it. "You're mine now," she whispered, her words a command, not a suggestion. "And there's nothing you can do to stop me." Her grip tightened on his waist, pulling him even closer, her body flush against his. He could feel the power in her, the raw strength, the way she seemed to tower over him, both physically and emotionally. He was smaller than her, weaker than her. He had never felt more vulnerable, more exposed, and yet there was a part of him that didn't want to escape, a part of him that wanted to stay exactly where he was. "I could destroy you," she said, her voice still soft but heavy with promise. "But instead, I'll give you a chance to prove yourself, to show me what you're really made of." Her lips brushed against his ear, sending a shiver through his entire body. The sensation was too much. His thoughts were spinning, his mind clouded with desire and confusion. She had him exactly where she wanted him, and he couldn't escape. "Not now, not anymore." "What will you do?" she asked, her voice a challenge, a dare. "Will you submit to me completely, or will you fight? The choice is yours. But remember," she paused, her fingers moving up to his chin, tilting his head back slightly. "Once you make your choice, there's no turning back." His breath hitched as he realized what she was offering him. He was standing at the edge of something that would change everything. He didn't know if he was ready for it, but the question lingered in his mind. Was he brave enough to go through with it? The Giantess waited, her eyes locked on his, her body still pressed against his. She wasn't backing down, and in that moment, he knew. Neither could he. The silence between them grew heavier, suffocating. The choice was laid before him, clear and undeniable. She was right, there was no turning back. The Giantess stood before him, her eyes glinting with anticipation, waiting for him to make a decision that would alter everything. He could feel the weight of her gaze, her intense stare burning through him like a hot knife. She was waiting for him to make his move, waiting for him to either give in completely or try to escape, though deep down, he knew there was no escaping her now. She had ensnared him in her world, and somehow, he had let himself be pulled. Her presence was overwhelming, her strength and power practically radiating off her in waves. She was no longer just the caged Giantess. She had become the force that controlled him, that held him captive in ways he never thought possible. Every inch of her body screamed dominance, but there was something else too, something softer, hidden beneath her powerful exterior. She stepped closer, her large form towering over him. Her hands reached out, delicate yet strong, fingers brushing his chest with an almost calculated gentleness. It was a reminder of her power, her control. And yet, there was a touch of something more, something that held him in place, even when his instincts screamed at him to run. "I've given you the chance," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But there was no mistaking the steel beneath the words. "Now, it's time to see how far you're willing to go." He could hear the challenge in her voice, but something else too. A promise that everything would change once he made his choice. He wasn't just feeding her anymore. He wasn't just standing there, helpless. No, this was about him, about what he was willing to give, and what he was willing to lose. His heart raced, pounding in his ears as her hands moved to his neck, her fingers wrapping lightly around the base of it. The sensation was almost suffocating, but not in a bad way. No, this was something else. This was power, a kind of raw, undeniable power that he could feel all the way down to his bones. "You think I can't hurt you?" she purred, her lips brushing against his ear. "I could, but you don't need to worry about that. Not yet." Her words were a whisper of a threat, but it wasn't fear that gripped him. No, it was the realization that he had crossed into a world where he was no longer the one in control, where, for the first time in his life, someone else was calling the shots. "You've already given me so much," she said, her voice now low and almost tender. "But you still haven't given me everything." The words lingered in the air, like a forbidden promise, and he knew, in that moment, that there was no walking away from her. There was no escaping the storm she had stirred inside him. There was only the choice to make. Her fingers tightened, just a little, around his throat. Not enough to hurt, but enough to remind him of the power she held over him. And he knew, deep down, that it was the power he had willingly given her. It was the power he had wanted, without even realizing it. "What will it be, little human?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with danger. "Will you give yourself completely? Will you submit to me, as you always knew you would? Or will you fight, knowing it will only make things worse?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The suspense was unbearable. But he knew that whatever choice he made, it would be the end of who he was before. He would never be the same again. The Giantess took a step back, her hands leaving his neck, but her eyes never leaving his. The power dynamic between them had shifted, and he couldn't deny it any longer. She had won. But what was the price? "Choose now," she said, her voice like a spell, a command. "Choose, and let's see what happens next." His mind was a storm, his thoughts scattered. There was no turning back now, and in the quiet that followed, he knew deep down that his decision would define the rest of his life. What will he choose? Will he submit fully to her power, or will he try to resist and face the consequences? The answer lies in your hands. Let me know what you think in the comments below.